Hello and welcome to Tarot with Tanya. This is 7 cards for 7 days, and we are beginning with Monday, February 19 and going to Sunday, February 25th. This is the first week of Pisces, so the sun's moved there, and we start our week with the moon in Cancer, and it will end up with the moon in Virgo. So Cancer can be very romantic, soft, a lot of feelings, ruled by the moon, concerned with home, family, things like that. And then by the time we get to Virgo, that can be health, practicality, work, things like that. So we're going from water to earth during that week. And what I notice off the bat about the cards is that we have a lot of minors this week, 1 royal card and 1 empress, our major. So it kind of, well, we'll talk about that in a bit here. Let me just also say welcome. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you if you should like, share, subscribe if you end up liking this video. And also take it with a grain of salt. It's for the collective. So what resonates for you is great. And if it doesn't, just let that go on by. So a little astrology to get us going here too. So by Wednesday, the 21st, we have our Venus conjunct with Mars. And, that's the classic feminine sign, Venus, and then Mars, the masculine. So this could be very good for our social lives. It's that balance of the masculine and feminine. It could be great for a good date with someone. On Thursday, then, we have Mercury leaving Aquarius and entering Pisces. We've had a lot of planets in Aquarius, including Venus and Mars. So when Mercury enters Pisces, it's very good for our imaginations, for our creativity. That can be quite enhanced, art, music of any form. And on the other hand, not too practical. So not the best time for, maybe financial work or things like that. Just keep that in mind. And by Saturday, we have Venus again, square Jupiter this time. So this is where we want to try to remain moderate. Jupiter expands everything. And, Venus, the planet of love and beauty and art. So we want to be moderate. We want to try to be in grace. It can be very good for examining relationships. That Jupiter can bring in a philosophical perspective. And we might be drawn to another culture, a sort of expanded worldview, also with that, Jupiter influence with Venus. Squares can be a little bit tense, so there may be some of that feeling, but it will pass pretty quickly here. All right, so what do the cards have to say? Well, we start off with a fiery Monday. And that is with the Knight of Rods. And I'm using the Aquarian Tarot. And rods are wands or fire energy in this deck. So you can see he has a very interesting rod or wand here because there is this beautiful red flower at the end of it. So he doesn't look terribly ferocious, but he's really passionate, very instinctual. That's what fire rules, our instincts. The hair standing up on the back of the neck. Some people call it the spidey senses, things like that. But can be very action-oriented too, likes to get things done. So good energy for that on Monday. And by Tuesday, we've moved from the masculine wands to another masculine, and this is the air element represented by the swords. And with a 5, I've had a lot of conversation with someone dear to me recently about this card and how, I'm sorry, when I bring it too close, it fades out, but I hope you can see enough of that to get a good visual. Um, it feels like in this conversation I mentioned that this card can have a lot to do with what we project. We all have a mind, and with that mind, we create, and we can create ideas, attitudes, tones. Our thought forms can be something that we project out into our reality. So when I look at this, I see this person, perhaps on an old battlefield, something like that. You have two crossed swords, which makes me think of the Two of Swords in this deck. And then he or she, they carry two, and then one is planted. So we kind of get a hint of the One of Swords, the Two of Swords, maybe even the three there. All of this is wrapped up in this one. So the one sword, clarity, the two, making decisions, three can be feeling betrayed or heartbroken or some kind of old sorrow. Four doesn't seem to play much of a role in this, except maybe if you count the two on the ground, two over the shoulder, and that's where we get into a kind of rest, peaceful situation. So here we end up with the five. And that's why I'm thinking lots is going on here, and that where it can be where it's an effort to see through our own projections. We might create projections of defeat, and we don't really want to do that. It might seem that way, but how can we turn that around and change that into something more positive by realizing it's just a thought form, and we can have other thought forms to replace it. I know it's not that easy, but it's good work. By our Wednesday, we've moved into an earth energy, and this one is the Two of Pentacles. So sometimes people call this one the juggler. It's a balancing act. As you can see, there's a bit of a yin-yang or an infinity kind of energy going here, circulating back and forth, back and forth. I feel like the water behind the body of this person is indicative of that too. How do we find that balance in our material, our physical world? By Thursday, we have moved to the Six of Pentacles. And again, the earth energy represented by pentacles, you might know them as discs. With this one, it's a little tricky. I've seen it called abundance in some decks. That's a Thoth deck, I believe. And other ones, there's a little bit more of an insinuation of almost a kind of greediness, like I've accumulated a lot, you haven't, I'll give you some of that, but you're sort of at my mercy, whether I feel generous or not. But I don't tend to read it that way. To me, that's kind of the dark side of it, which can apply. But I think for most of us, it is a sense of abundance. There might be some contentment with that. There might be a responsibility with that. How do I juggle it? But one of the reasons I tend to see it as the more positive is because it's connected to the lovers. And sixes tend to be fairly happy cards. And, that's where I end up placing that one. And I mentioned that we had the Empress in this week's reading. So she's our one and only major this week. And she is all about the bounty, all about the creativity, about nature, and feeling deeply rooted within that, being able to manifest on a very powerful level. It can be a very abundant mother. It doesn't, it's not gender related, but a feminine kind of energy of abundance, feeling very nurtured, very grounded. Dark side, yes, there are always, if we choose to go there. So then it can turn into feeling manipulated or controlled, or maybe even what's the word I'm looking for? Suffocated by over mothering or something like that. So use it to help you maybe feel more abundant and creative, more well off, or if you're feeling in the other direction, look around, see where that energy might be coming up from, that kind of slightly suffocated feeling. But that's our Friday, so it could be a lovely Friday. When we get to Saturday, we get another sword. So We ended up with 3 this week. This is our second one. I mentioned the ace earlier, and particularly I brought that in because of this card coming up. And so here you see it similar to, I'll go ahead and bring that back in, that 5 where that one sword is being held as it's pierced into the ground, and you get a little bit more of that sense here. We don't see it actually in the ground, but it's piercing something, and then we have these 2 white roses by it. So a lot of clarity, a lot of seeing with vision, with true vision, with this very discerning kind of insight. And that's our Saturday. Our last day, Sunday for this week, we have another sword, as I mentioned, and this one is the 8. And it is not, we can, perhaps see it as a feminine type figure. It often is shown that way. And again, it is not gender determined. It is much more about a kind of passivity, a mental passivity that, we're not fighting back against our own negative thoughts. So the illusion that this one represents on the mental plane, again, because it's swords, is that there's an entrapment, that the person is bound, cannot see, blindfolded, and surrounded by these swords. But none of that is really true. The bindings are loose. The swords are really not an entrapment. It's all about that kind of illusion. And since it is an 8, it makes it connected to the strength card in many decks. And that strength is about knowing the self, knowing when we set up our own illusions, our own projections, we put those thought forms out there and they're not really true. They feel true. So I understand that part, not faulting us for doing that. It's a very human kind of situation. But I think when we work with that strength card, we are working with, am I projecting this? What kinds of illusions do I feel entrapped? And how can I get myself out of it if that is the case? So all in all for this week, we don't have any numerical repetitions. It just feels like this interesting little hodgepodge of different energies, fire and air and earth, and this deep abundance from the Empress. So, being mentally aware, it's interesting as we've moved from Aquarius, the sun at least, into Pisces. Pisces moves much more into that feeling realm, but we still have a lot of planets in Aquarius right now. We have that Pluto there, and that's a heavy duty player. So it seems like those remnants are with us, or those energies are still guiding us toward a fairly mental picture. So get the earthiness, the groundedness, the feelings when you can, and again, use that fire. So we'll end with a card from the Crystal Angels Oracle deck, and what came up today was Sodalite. And I'll share what the booklet has to say about this particular stone, which is blue. There's a lot of purple going on in the card, but I'll put that back up one more time. If you look closely at that sort of orb being held, there's blue within that. So this card comes up whenever you crave connecting with like-minded people. It's a sign for you to get out of the house, away from the computer, meet people with common interests. You're highly encouraged to join clubs, attend networking meetings, get involved with spiritual or religious groups, whatever is right for you. Again, it's not enough to chat online. You need face-to-face interaction with people who hold your hand, hug you, offer you support and friendship. This is also a sign of career advancement through networking and business connections. Similarly, it might be time to reach out to a mentor or take a class related to your life purpose passions. I really like that, life purpose passions. It's all about receiving the teachings that other people can bring you, as well as developing friendships. So, beloveds, I hope that helps you. I always do. I wish you a beautiful week. Excuse me for being a bit late. There was an illness in my circle, and that had to be dealt with. So I'm running behind here. So I'll get this posted as soon as I can. And again, I'll mention, please share, like, subscribe if this is working for you. And I will see you next week.